November 24th, 1971. A businessman walked into an airport carrying a briefcase. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He wasn't a criminal known to police. To everyone around him, he was just another passenger traveling before Thanksgiving. Yet within a few hours, he would pull off the most famous unsolved hijacking in aviation history. He would board a commercial airliner, threaten the crew with what appeared to be a bomb, collect $200,000 in cash, receive 4 parachutes, then leap into a violent storm thousands of feet above the Pacific Northwest. He disappeared into the darkness. No body was ever found. No confirmed parachute. No confirmed remains. No confirmed identity. More than 50 years later, nobody knows whether he died that night or escaped with one of the greatest crimes ever committed. This is the story of the man known as D.B. Cooper, the hijacker who vanished into thin air. Chapter 1. America in the 1970s. To understand how extraordinary this crime was, we first need to understand America in 1971. Air travel was completely different. There were no TSA checkpoints, no body scanners, no metal detectors, no body screening. A passenger could walk into an airport minutes before departure, buy a ticket with cash, and board an aircraft without showing identification. It sounds unbelievable today, but at the time, it was normal. This relaxed security environment created opportunities. Throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s, airplane hijackings became increasingly common. Most hijackers wanted transportation to Cuba. Others demanded money. Airlines were struggling to stop them. Yet none of those cases would become as legendary as what happened aboard Northwest Orient Flight 305. Because unlike most hijackers, Cooper never intended to survive through negotiation. His entire plan revolved around disappearing. Chapter 2. The mysterious passenger. The afternoon of November 24th seemed ordinary. At Portland International Airport, holiday travelers crowded terminals. Among them stood a man using the name Dan Cooper. Witnesses described him as approximately 45 years old. He stood around 6 feet tall. His appearance was neat and professional. Dark suit, white shirt, black tie, polished shoes, dark sunglasses. Nothing about him attracted attention. He purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle for $20, then calmly waited for boarding. No luggage except a black briefcase. No signs of nervousness. No unusual behavior. Investigators later believed he may have intentionally chosen a route that was short enough to minimize complications while still allowing time for his plan to unfold. Everything seemed carefully calculated. The man wasn't improvising. He knew exactly what he was doing. Chapter 3. Flight 305. At 2:50 p.m., Flight 305 departed Portland. The Boeing 727 carried 36 passengers. The aircraft itself would later become important to the mystery. Unlike most passenger jets, the Boeing 727 featured a rear staircase that could be lowered during flight. This unusual design would become central to Cooper's escape. After takeoff, Cooper sat quietly in seat 18E. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He smoked cigarettes. He appeared completely relaxed. Then he handed flight attendant Florence Schaffner a folded note. At first she ignored it. She assumed it was another passenger attempting to flirt. Cooper leaned toward her and quietly spoke. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Those words instantly changed history. Chapter 4. The bomb. Florence opened the note. The exact wording was never publicly released, but its message was unmistakable. Cooper claimed he possessed a bomb. He instructed her to sit beside him. When she did, Cooper opened his briefcase slightly. Inside, she saw what appeared to be 8 red cylinders connected by wires and a battery. Whether the device was real remains unknown. But in that moment, nobody was willing to take chances. Cooper calmly explained his demands. $200,000. For parachutes. A fuel truck waiting in Seattle. The instructions were precise. No panic. No shouting. No emotional outbursts. Investigators would later note how unusual his behavior was. Most hijackers appeared unstable. Cooper behaved like a professional, carrying out a carefully planned operation. Chapter 5. The negotiations, the cockpit was informed. Soon air traffic control became involved. Then the FBI. Authorities faced a difficult decision. The aircraft contained dozens of innocent passengers. Any mistake could be catastrophic. The government decided to comply. Meanwhile, passengers remained unaware. Most believed they were simply experiencing delays. Some read newspapers. Others chatted with family members. Few realized they were participating in one of the most famous criminal events in American history. As the aircraft circled Seattle, law enforcement assembled the ransom. Banks rushed to collect $20 bills. Every bill's serial number was recorded. Investigators believed this would allow them to track the money later. They assumed Cooper would eventually make a mistake. They had no idea how wrong they were. Chapter 6. The ransom. After several hours, Flight 305 landed in Seattle. Police vehicles surrounded the aircraft. Snipers positioned themselves nearby. Yet Cooper remained calm. The money was delivered. For parachutes arrived. Investigators deliberately supplied civilian parachutes because they hoped Cooper would be forced to take a hostage. He surprised everyone. Once his demands were met, he released every passenger. All 36 walked away unharmed. This decision remains one of the strangest aspects of the case. Cooper never appeared interested in violence. His objective was money and escape. Nothing else. Now only the flight crew remained on board. The second phase of his plan was about to begin. Chapter 7. Back into the sky, Cooper ordered the aircraft back into the air. His instructions were incredibly specific. Fly south toward Mexico. Maintain an altitude of approximately 10,000 feet. Keep speed around 170 knots. Leave the landing gear partially deployed. Keep the cabin unpressurized. These details impressed aviation experts. The average passenger wouldn't know them. Some investigators concluded Cooper possessed military, aviation, or aerospace experience. The aircraft departed Seattle shortly after 7:40 p.m. Outside, conditions were deteriorating. Rain hammered the fuselage. Strong winds swept across the mountains. Visibility was poor. Night had fallen. The perfect conditions for a disappearance. Chapter 8. The jump. As the aircraft moved through the storm, Cooper prepared. Crew members reported hearing movement in the cabin. At one point, he requested instructions for operating the rear stairs. Then communication stopped. The pilots remained in the cockpit. Nobody saw what happened next. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the aircraft suddenly experienced a noticeable pressure change. The tail section jerked upward. Something had happened. Investigators believe this was the moment Cooper jumped. He stepped out of the aircraft carrying a parachute and a bag containing $200,000. Below him stretched miles of wilderness. Dense forests, rugged mountains, freezing temperatures, darkness. No witnesses, no cameras, nothing. Within seconds, he vanished forever. Chapter 9. The search. Authorities immediately launched a massive search operation. FBI agents flooded the region. Military personnel joined the effort. Helicopters scanned forests. Search teams combed rivers and mountains. The area was enormous. Thousands of square miles. Despite months of effort, investigators found nothing. No body, no parachute, no money, no clothing, no evidence confirming survival or death. The complete absence of evidence shocked investigators. Normally, nature leaves clues. In Cooper's case, nature revealed almost nothing. Chapter 10. The suspects. Over the decades, hundreds of suspects emerged. Former soldiers, paratroopers, pilots, criminals, adventure seekers. Every few years, a new theory appeared. One of the most famous suspects was Richard McCoy, a Vietnam veteran who later carried out a similar hijacking. The similarities were remarkable, yet evidence failed to conclusively link him to Cooper. Other suspects included former airline employees, military veterans, intelligence operatives, even ordinary citizens whose families believed they had discovered secret. Each suspect generated headlines. Each suspect ultimately failed to provide proof. The mystery remained unsolved. Chapter 11. The money. Then came a breakthrough. Or so it seemed. In 1980, nearly 9 years after the hijacking, An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram discovered something extraordinary while playing near the Columbia River. Buried beneath the sand were bundles of cash. Investigators quickly identified the serial numbers. The money belonged to Cooper. It was part of the ransom. At last, a physical connection to the case had been found. But instead of solving the mystery, it deepened it. How had the money reached the river? Why only a small portion? Where's the rest? Nobody could explain it. Even today, experts debate how those bills arrived there. Chapter 12, Did he survive? This question remains at the center of the mystery. Many investigators believe Cooper died during the jump. The conditions were horrific. Night, Zen, freezing temperatures, strong winds, difficult terrain. He wore a business suit, not survival gear. Others disagree. They point to his detailed knowledge of aircraft operations, his calm demeanor, his careful planning, his apparent understanding of parachuting. Perhaps he knew exactly what he was doing. Perhaps he landed safely. Perhaps he disappeared because that was always the plan. If so, Cooper achieved something almost impossible. He outsmarted the FBI. Conclusion: more than half a century has passed since that stormy night. Technology has transformed the world. Criminal mysteries once thought impossible to solve have been unraveled through DNA and digital evidence. Yet DB. Cooper remains a ghost, a man who appeared from nowhere, hijacked an airplane, collected a fortune, jumped into darkness, and vanished. Maybe he died in the wilderness. Maybe he escaped and lived quietly for decades. Maybe he watched documentaries about himself and smiled. We may never know, but that uncertainty is exactly why the story endures. Because somewhere between the aircraft door and the storm below, D.B. Cooper became more than a criminal. He became a legend, and legends are much harder to catch than men.